Shalom, shalom. This your boy, this your brother, this your friend. Um, Even the some, I'm their enemy. This your brother Yael coming at you again with another video. Um, Many people are wondering, why do I make the videos that I do? Why do I go in so passionately um, against the beliefs and the doctrines of the church and of Christianity like I do? I go in like I do because I spent over 20 years of my life believing it, teaching it, promoting its lifestyle, and working very hard to get my people, to get all people who I will encounter if they will listen, to give their lives to Jesus, to say the sinner's prayer and give their life to God in the person of Jesus Christ. And I believed it with all my heart that I was doing the right thing. And I thought it was needful to bring people in because it was going to speed up the salvation of the whole world and the coming of Christ back to the earth, and just this utopia, this perfect world, and we will have peace on earth and goodwill to all men when he come back and set everything straight. And then one night, almost 10 years ago, I was going through this struggle for many years, but I started to question things that I was seeing within the text itself. I stopped filtering what I was seeing with my own eyes through how I was taught and how scriptures were taken out of context. I got away from that and I started to look at what is the text actually saying. It was like, if the New Testament is supposed to be the fulfillment of what the Old Testament plainly states, I need to plainly see it. Then I realized nothing was plainly being said. You have to take the verses out of context. You have to insert what you believe into the text to see what you want the text to say. And I challenged myself to find my faith within the Old Testament only. And to my surprise, I found out that I could not see my faith being promoted in the text of the Tanakh of the Old Testament. And then I challenged myself to dig deeper, to ask questions. And a lot of the questions that I asked the people that I looked up to for years, people that was much learned than I was, being apostles and bishops and ministers within the church for decades. And I asked them basic questions that they could not answer. And if they did answer it, it was the normal things that I've always heard. Some answers weren't even answers at all, because many of them just told me just believe, pray and fast, ask God to open your eyes that you will see that you're in the right way. But if it was plainly written in the text, I should be able to plainly see it without asking God to open my eyes to see it. Because if something is plainly stated, it then only comes down to me choosing to believe what is stated. Not having my eyes open to see it. Because if it's plainly stated, I can see it says it. But the thing was, it wasn't plainly stating any of the things they was telling me it was saying. And then understanding, I was taught Christianity from a westernized understanding. Everything about the Hebrew scriptures was brought from a Western mindset, a Greco-Roman mindset. Nothing was never filtered or understood from a Hebraic concept. So me coming to this understanding that I was mistaught, I was misinformed, I was miseducated, I was fooled, I was lied to, I was deceived to, even by some people might have knowingly been doing it, but most people I believe was sincerely just wrong in what they was teaching. Not that they was trying to be treacherous, it's just that they was misinformed themselves like I was, and they taught from a place of believing this to be so, believing this to be right, and wanting to share it with the masses, wanting people to experience what I was going to experience, going to heaven and having a mansion in heaven and walking the streets paved with gold and everything. But then I found out there's nowhere in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh, in the Holy Scriptures, what I deem the Holy Scriptures. I do not consider the New Testament scripture. Even though it might have some scriptural references in it, that don't make it scripture. So I was finding out that many of the things I was seeing just was not lining up. Because if God is plainly speaking in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament, and then the New Testament come around where God does not speak, they have things saying like they heard a voice from heaven. In the Old Testament, we see, thus said Yahweh. Yahweh said unto them. Yahweh said unto the prophet. We don't see any of that in the New Testament. We don't see where the Creator, where the Most High, where Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, speak one time. Where you know it's Him without a shadow of a doubt. And it opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I just kept digging deeper. I needed answers. And because when I was a Christian, I used to hold up the Bible and say, this is my final authority. This is my final authority. But in actuality, it really wasn't my final authority. It was what was being taught to me. It was what I was being indoctrinated with. That was my final authority. My personal belief system was my final authority. Because I found out a lot of things that I believed, a lot of things that I taught, even as a Christian, the New Testament writings didn't even support it. And surely the Old Testament didn't even support it. And I'm only saying the Old Testament because I'm using terms that most people can relate to, that most Christians can relate to. But it's nothing old about it. It is life itself. It is everlasting. And when I came to this place of understanding, these things are not so. I had to make a decision. Was I going to continue to promote a lifestyle that I made the decision based off what I'm seeing is not so? Or am I going to do the wise thing and embrace what the scriptures are actually saying and believe that? Not filter the scriptures through my BS, my belief system, but allow the scriptures themselves to govern, to make up the things that I believe. My faith is supported by what is stated, not by what I believe, not by what somebody taught me. And the things they're telling me is by the Spirit. And a lot of things that people say they got by the Spirit contradicts the scripture. Or how I personally take the verse itself, because that's how somebody told me. That's what it really means. Even though the text is not saying it plainly, but by the Spirit, this is what the text is actually saying. And I just realized that wasn't good enough for me. No amount of faith was going to fix what I am actually reading, what the actual Hebrew text say, and how the English translation is wishy-washy at best. So it's nothing like understanding the original language, getting a grasp of the language. Now, I'm no Hebrew scholar, but we have enough tools out there to help somebody to better understand what is actually written in the Hebrew manuscript, and to get some kind of clarity and understanding, to find out, okay, is the English translation lining up with what is stated? And once you see that the English translation is faulty, then you must understand, I must dig deeper to find out what is actually being said. I cannot rely on somebody constantly telling me what is said, what it really means. We have to come to a place where we know what is being said. Pray to the Creator to open your eyes to see what the text say. Not, God, open my eyes so I could agree with my leader. That's not the prayer that we should be praying. We should be praying, Most High, open my eyes that I will have the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of what you are saying to your people. What you meant when you said that. That's what it is. So, really almost over a decade ago, I started on this journey. And actually, just over 9 years ago, I made a decision. I could no longer declare myself a Christian because I doubted everything that Christianity stood for. All the core beliefs of Christianity, I denounced, even though I was still going to church. Then I realized there's no way I can continue to go here knowing that I am not a Christian. So I denounced it. I denounced the core beliefs of it. And I went to embrace the nationality, the understanding that I am a descendant of the people of the book, and that they have a God, and the God of the Israelites was not Jesus. Was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the one true and living God, and that I have a nationality. My nationality is not African American. It is not Negro. It is not a nigger. It's not a colored. My nationality is an Israelite. And with understanding my nationality, I came to understand who was the God of the Israelite. And when I embraced the God of Israel, I understood that the God of Israel gave a constitution, gave a culture and a lifestyle, righteousness, a path of righteousness on how he wants his people to live, divine teachings and instructions on how he wants his chosen, his elect to walk. And when I embraced that, that's when I became alive. That's when I became born again, so to speak. But I came into the knowledge of the truth. I did not need to accept God becoming a man for me. I did not need the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to die in my place so I could have a relationship with him. I didn't need to be bathed in the blood. I didn't need to bow at the foot of the cross. I just simply repented. I turned from all my wickedness. I turned away from idol gods. I turned away from false doctrine, and I went to the scriptures. I went to the Torah to find out, what does this righteous king require of his people. And I began to open myself up to the study, open myself up to what was being said. And I had to be purged of the things that I used to believe with all my heart. I had to be purged from it. I had to be reprogrammed. I had to get them teachings out of me, because I found out it is not lining up with thus said Jehovah. If God says one thing, how can I accept what the Christian Christ say? How can I accept what Paul is saying when they contradict what God is saying? A half-truth don't make the truth. It's still a lie. A half-truth is not the truth. It is a lie. Taking verses out of context to make it say something else is being dishonest. It is a lie. And there's no other way to get around it. If God says simple things, easy to understand, and then someone got to come to be so skilled and so eloquent in speech to twist it and manipulate it to make it say something else, that is deception. Now, you as my Christian brothers and sisters, you can believe whatever you choose to believe. The choice is yours, just like the choice was mine, and I had to make it. And I never looked back on it when I made it. I felt like the weights were lifted off of me. I felt free when I made my decision to follow Jehovah and him alone. I felt free. I didn't feel bound up living by the law, statutes, and commandments of God. It's not a burden. It is the will of Jehovah, is the will of God to live upright, to walk in the path of righteousness. So this is what I did for me. And I felt it is the best decision I ever made, because I just allowed the text to speak and not filter it through what someone told me, but just to look at the text, because even with the English translation, you can still see things don't line up. Because if you could go to one text and it plainly says this, and then you see in the other book in the New Testament, it says something that contradicts, but it's all supposed to be the same book. It's supposed to flow seamlessly together. It's supposed to all be inspired by the same God. But then you look at it, see like God's constantly contradicting himself or twisting things he say. And I made the decision that I had to make for me. Because as for me and my house, we're going to serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're going to serve the God of all the earth. No longer will I submit, no matter where I lay prostrate before an idol, in the name of another God, of a strange God, a no God that our fathers did not know. I only bow, I only bend a knee to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Even though I may call him a name that some of you may not use. Some people may call him Jehovah. Some people may say Jehovah. Some people may say Yehovah. Some people may say Yahuwah. Some people may address him the way I choose to pronounce the name and say Yehovah. But no matter if you use either one of them, those there, we know you're talking about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And God wants us to embrace him, to embrace his name, to embrace who he is, who he really is. And I choose to believe his report. I choose to believe the report of the Lord, the report of Jehovah, his resume, what he says of himself. And at no account did he say, I need to become a man, die in your place, be resurrected on the third day for you to have salvation and to escape hell and to live in heaven forever. Now, I just want to share this one thing. How are you going to live in heaven forever with Jesus when it teaches in the New Testament that he's supposed to come back to the earth and rule in the throne of David here on the earth, but you're going to be in heaven forever with him? That doesn't make any sense. How are you going to be with him in heaven when he's supposed to physically come back and sit in the throne of David in Jerusalem, in the land of Israel? That doesn't make sense. Why would the eternal God, now he's eternal, which means he don't have no expiration date. The eternal God cannot die. He is from everlasting to everlasting. And if anywhere in there you put a halt to everlasting, he's not everlasting. Anytime you put a halt to eternal, he is not eternal. My God cannot die. He is eternal. He has no reason to die. He has no reason to become a man and shed his blood. Because the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was already forgiving people. So why would he need to become a man, die, come back from the grave, and if we put our faith in the person of Jesus and his sacrifice, he will forgive us? That doesn't make any sense. God was already forgiving his people when they confessed, when they turned from their wickedness, and when they returned unto him and started returning back to Torah, he forgave them. He does not need a blood sacrifice to forgive us, because we see countless stories in the scriptures that show that he don't need blood to be shed to forgive sin. All we have to do is study the Torah, study the Tanakh, and let it speak, and ask the Most High to open up our heart, open up our eyes, that we can see the beauty that is written therein. Anyway, this is all I wanted to share with you. My brief story. This is your brother Yael Ezra Ben Levy. Till next time. Peace.